Hello, Yahya, and welcome to the book Jane Eyre.
Hello, Miss Letty.
And we're going to do chapter 8, right? Chapter 8 is where we're
All
up
right.
to, and you're going to start by reading. So off you go.
In the garden, in June, the weather was hot. One evening, I walked into the garden. Mr. Rochester was there too. Do you like this house, Jean? He asked. Yes, sir, I replied. Soon Adele will go to live at school. Jean, he said. Then I will not want to governess here. Will you be sad then, Jean? Well, you leave Thornsfield Hall. Leave? I said quickly. Must I leave Thornsfield? My dear Mr. Rochester stopped. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, I am going to be married soon. Oh, sir, I said, then I must go far away from Thornsfield, far away from you, sir. I started to cry.
Right. Now, here it says that the little Adele is going to live at a school. And if you go to live at a school, it's called a boarding school, right? It has a special name, boarding school. I will always remember you, Jane, Mr. Rochester said. Will you forget me? No, sir, I replied. I will never forget you. I don't want to leave Thornfield, sir. I don't want to leave you. Don't leave, Jane, Mr. Rochester said. Stay here. He smiled at me. I must not stay here, sir, I said. You're going to marry Mrs. Ingram. I'm poor. I don't have a pretty face, but I have a heart. It is a loving heart, sir. Jane, I'm not going to marry Mrs. Ingram.
Mr. Rochester said, She's rich, she's beautiful. You are poor. You are not beautiful, but I want to marry you. Will you marry me, Jane? For a moment, I could not speak. At last, I asked, Do you love me, sir? I do, he replied. Then, sir, I will marry you, I said. And Mr. Rochester kissed me.
Right. I'm just thinking for a minute. This is why I'm smiling. He says, I can't see it now on the screen. You are not beautiful. If my future husband or partner said to me, you are not very beautiful, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I would like it a lot. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So what I think is beautiful, maybe you don't. But to actually to say it to someone's face, it's making me laugh a lot.
A little
Right.
bit rude.
I think even if the person is ugly or not so handsome, the person you are with can see the beauty in you. And I don't think they would speak like that. So, what can you see here?
We see this is a garden, I think. We are seeing a lot of bushes, trees, and we have in the middle font. It's nice, and we can see in the sky cloud, birds, and that's we are
Right.
seeing.
So we suppose this is the garden where Mr. Rochester proposed to Jane.
Hmm.
As you said, there's a fountain in the middle. In black and white, it doesn't say a lot. So it's like bushes, trees, and some birds in the sky.
Hmm.
Right. And this picture,
Uh, this is for sure. This Mr. Rochester and Jane. And it's the place to who proposed to her and try to kiss her, as we can see. And um, I reckon that Mr. Rochester is older than Jane by the mustache and yes,
the way he
but
dresses,
exactly. And but in my opinion, Jane here, she's a beautiful, not that.
she doesn't look that ugly.
Uh,
No, she looks
no.
plain, maybe we would call plain, but I don't think she's ugly. She's young. and she looks quite nice. I think he looks ugly if I need to say something.
Uh,
But that's just my opinion. So we can see that Jane is really in love with him. I think she's in love with him because she's never known anybody else, because she was in an orphanage. Right,
mhm.
off you go.
My dearest Jane, he said, nothing can stop our marriage now. We will be married in a month, Jane. We kissed again. Then I said good night and I went into the house. I went upstairs to my room. Later, I remembered my Uncle John years later. I will write to him in Madeira. I said to myself, I will tell him about my marriage to Mr. Rochester. I am very happy. My uncle will be happy too.
So the uncle lives in Madeira, which I think is an island, but I'm not sure where it
Mhm.
is exactly. I think it's a tropical island, I think, but not sure. 4 weeks passed. Mr. Rochester was going to buy me many beautiful things. He was going to give me many presents, but I didn't want these things. No, Edward, I said. I'm not beautiful. I don't want beautiful things. I want you, Edward. It was a month, it was the month of July, 2 days before our wedding. Mr. Rochester went away. I will return tomorrow, he said. I love you, Jane. That night I went to my bedroom early. My wedding dress and my wedding veil were in my room. I looked at them. Now, a veil is a piece of cloth that normally a bride puts on in front of her face. It's very thin, it's normally made of lace, and that is a veil to cover her face before she gets married. Right, off you go.
In 2 days, I will be Jane Rochester, I said to myself. Then I went to bed, but I did not sleep well. The next day, Mr. Rochester returned. He looked at me carefully. What's wrong, Jane? He asked. Your face pale. Are you frightened? I had a very strange dream last night, I said. It was a dream about this house, but in my dream, Thornfield Hall had no roof. The walls were burnt, they were black in my dream. I tried to find you, but you were not in the house. Are you afraid of a dream, Jane? Mr. Rochester asked. No, Edward, I replied, but I woke up from my dream. There was a woman in my room. She was tall and heavy. She had long black hair. The woman was holding a candle. I asked she put.
Right. So pale is referring here to the skin of her face, and pale means like very white. And she's had this very horrible dream, which is like a nightmare. Do you ever
Yes.
have dreams?
Yes, but I think it's a dream. It's not like, for example, I would say that I don't know what we call it in English. So, when I was in my village, I go to the mountain, then I see an actress, Leonardo DiCaprio, whatever, doing stuff over there. I don't know what kind of dream this is.
Ah, something that wasn't real, but you could see
Mm,
it. Oh,
yes.
right.
Mhm.
Okay. So you used to see an actress every time you used to
Actor,
go.
not actress, actor, or people that I have seen them in TV or.
Right.
Mm,
So maybe
mm,
they were in your subconsciousness, no? You'd seen them a week before, maybe a month before, and then they came back into your mind. We all dream,
yes.
believe it or not, because
Mm,
scientists tell us that, but we don't always remember our dreams. Right. So she put the candle by my mirror. She put my wedding veil over her head and she looked in the mirror. Then I saw her face. It was a strange, terrible face, Edward, I said. Suddenly, the woman tore my veil into two pieces. She threw the pieces on the floor. What happened next? Mr. Rochester asked. The woman held her candle near my face. I replied, She looked at me and she laughed. Then she went away. So what do we see here?
As she described in the previous chapter, a woman, terrible woman with the really rubbish hair, I don't know, and she's handling a candle, and probably she's, I don't know, speaking to the Jane, and Jane looks afraid of her.
Right. So here
Yes,
we can see a very frightening looking woman holding a candle. And this was normal at this time because they didn't have electricity. And we can imagine that Jane woke up in a surprise or shock to see somebody there. Right, off you go.
this happened in your dream, Jane, Mr. Rochester said. It did not happen in my dream, Edward. I said. This morning, my wedding bell was on the floor of my room. It was torn. It was in two pieces. But the women did not hurt you, Jane, Mr. Rochester said. Sleep in Adele's room tonight. My dear, you will have no more bad dreams.
So as she was so sleepy, maybe she didn't realize that it was really happening to her. But then in the morning, when she saw the veil on the floor, she realized. So we have finished chapter 8, and we will have to wait to see what happens in chapter 9 when they are going to get married. So you will have to watch the channel to see what happens in the next chapter. Thank you for helping me read, and maybe you will like the story and you will read it all yourself. Now, this is a beginner's version. So there is the real version, which is more complicated and it's got more descriptive words and more things to the story. But this is the basic of the story. So thank you, Yahya, and I will see you again.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
Bye.